Hi, everyone. Welcome back to No Pat Answers. We're your hosts, Dr. Ray Siervo and Ali Kilmurray. This show will help you better understand the reliability of Christianity, the Bible, faith, and worldview. Here we believe there is no place for pat answers. And for those of you who don't know, a pat answer is a not well thought out, shallow answer. We're so happy you're back. Let's go ahead and jump into today's video.
And there we are.
Here we are, no pat answers.
Yep. I'm glad we stuck with that name, even though I had to bring it back. I think this is the second time that I thought I had used it, and that was it. Now it came back to it. But
Yep. I love no pat answers.
yeah, I think it's the right term for what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, when we were thinking about a name or what we were going to call this,
Yeah.
once no answers came into the equation, there was no other. That was it.
No other choice, right?
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're talking about infinitude and eternality. And just a recap, the last video, we talked about God's self-existence.
Right. God is not dependent on anything to exist.
Right.
Anything he does, he doesn't need our help and so on. Well, we'll unpack that too later on as that works out.
Yeah, so usually when we start these videos, we do go into defining what we are going to be talking about. So would you define eternality and infinitude?
Sure. So one, eternality has to do with time, and infinitude has to do with space. Or you could look at infinitude to also measure, if you think you could, but you really can't measure infinity, but it has to do with the limits, or that God has no limits. But eternality means that God is outside of time, not subject to time. And it's a very difficult term to explain without referring to time in some way. And because we can't talk with eternal language, and neither could we understand it if God spoke it to us directly. So when we say eternal, I say it means that God is outside of time. So what have I done right there? I've said that there's a space and God is outside of it. Well, that's wrong, because God is in his omnipresence is everywhere.
Right. So he's in the space and outside space.
Exactly.
Above, below, next to, in.
So when I say he's outside of time, it's really almost a metaphor in the sense of looking at there's this composite thing called time, and God stands outside of it. What we really mean by that is that he's not subject to it. So the way that some theologians have expressed that is that God exists in the eternal now. He doesn't have a past, and he doesn't have a future. He is always just now. When we ascribe words to God that help us understand, we say God remembers. Well, not really accurate. We're trying to ascribe something we do when we remember, in the sense of, well, I hadn't thought of that, so now I have to think about it. God knows everything instantly, simultaneously.
Right. All the time.
Never changes for him.
Yes.
Right.
Which goes back to pure actuality.
Right. Yeah. See, now you see how it fits
Right. Yeah.
a little bit better.
Right. I was going to just mention in this video that when you watch these in the order that we're presenting them, you will see how the dots are being connected.
Right. Yeah,
So pure actuality kind of rolled into simplicity, that kind of rolled into self-existence, and now we're rolling into infinitude and eternality.
eternality. Yeah. So his eternality is that God sees every moment of time simultaneously because he's not subject to time. He sees everything that happens at the beginning. And have to remember when we do apologetics and I talk about proof for the existence of God, God has no beginning. So everything else, like time and space, have a beginning. Scientists have proven that. They've been able to say that the universe began at this point zero, and then
Right,
everything that happens, well, something had to make that point zero all of a sudden start. And so time and space they work together. You can't have one without the other. As soon as you have space, you have to measure now movement within the space, and that's what time is.
right,
Time is the measurement of these things moving. We talk about, every year our planet circles the sun. Every day there's a 24-hour period where the Earth revolves. Um, and so we measure everything now, time and space. If you didn't have space, you wouldn't have time.
right.
And without space, there's no need for time. Um, so they work together. And that's what Einstein discovered, is that those two things were created simultaneously. They came into
Play,
being. God is not subject to either of those, being eternal.
right.
So he's not subject to time. He's not, he's already seen tomorrow. He's already seen 1,000 years from
Yeah,
today.
and the end.
Right. And and he sees the beginning simultaneously. It's part, and again, you see that unfolding into God's omniscience. Yeah. So
Right, which
that's,
we'll get into.
yeah. So that's the first part of it. Infinitude, when we say that God is infinite, you notice that that's a Latin word, infinite. It's without finitude, without finite. So God's not limited. He has no limits at all, not just in time. He has no limits in, when we say God is big. No, he doesn't have size. Size is a creature word that we apply to God and say, well, God is big. No, no. God doesn't have a shape, he doesn't have a body. He's spirit. So there can't be a place in the material universe where God is not there. Um, People think, well, hell is being apart from God. No, it's being in the wrong relationship for God for eternity. Whereas those of us who know the Lord and know God through Jesus, we're going to have a limitless time where we're going to have a positive relationship to God. And positive doesn't even, it's going to be a glorious relationship with God. We'll see him as he is. We'll see
Mhm.
Jesus as he is. So God doesn't have limits in anything. And then you can apply that to wisdom. Does God have a limit to his wisdom? No. Does he
No.
have a limit to his knowledge? No. Limit to his power? No. All of those things, he is infinitely strong, infinitely powerful, infinitely knowledgeable. That's how he knows everything, because he has no limits. And
So, okay,
go
that's
ahead.
great. I was just gonna say that is is that the essence of God?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the essence, and is the essence the same as the being of God?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it is God's essence to be infinite,
Yes. Absolutely.
eternal,
See, now you're understanding simple.
simplicity.
Yeah.
Okay. Now just jumping around a little bit. I'm curious as to why we would learn about infinitude and eternality together.
Because one deals with time and the other one deals with space, and
They
generally, those two things in our understanding go together.
time and space.
Yeah.
And so where does matter come into play? Would that be
Well,
time, space,
matter had to be created.
space, matter?
Yeah. Matter had to be created. So,
Would that be more under self-existence?
um, well,
That God has no matter, he's matterless,
yeah, he's immaterial.
immaterial,
Yeah. And that
matterless.
everything that is spiritual is immaterial. So even angels are immaterial, but angels differ from God. Spiritual beings differ from God in that they were created. So
Right.
God's the only uncreated one. When you read in the Old Testament about, the Philistines or whoever, the Amorites, Moabites, they're worshiping a spiritual being that they put into a form.
Mhm.
But that being was created. Even the demonic was created. Not created as demons, but by their free will, they became rebels against God.
Right, they revolted.
Right. Well, Satan revolted, Lucifer revolted, and they followed him.
Okay.
They were cast down with him, is the best we can understand how that works from Revelation. You
Right.
know, and yeah, so when you start to talk about connecting the dots. So when we talk about eternality, we say God is not subject to time. He lives in the
Present now.
yeah the everlasting or eternal now.
Oh, the eternal now.
Yeah, and when we say he's infinite means he has no limits um, at all. His being has no limits, and it's kind of like we're subjecting God to our understanding, trying to understand him this way. And we're kind of looking at him as we turn it around and say, okay, now that means this
Right.
if he has no limits. Um, and we're the ones who differ from God either morally, spiritually, whatever it is that put us in a position where we're not affecting him, we're affecting ourselves and we're affecting the rest of creation because of it.
Right.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
that
Very interesting.
makes you
Very
go,
complex.
yeah,
Yeah. You have to ponder a while,
yeah,
I think.
definitely. And it's worth doing.
Mhm.
It's worth doing it. And I hope people do ask questions because it doesn't always jive in people's minds. They'll think of a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I think most of the time. And I think we just live in a constant fear of asking silly questions,
Yeah,
which keeps us complacent.
it does. It's a place where we resign to, and I think that's probably part of our problem is that we just resign to those places and don't ever come out to think about it.
Mhm.
And we learn that a lot of young people leave the church because they couldn't get answers.
Yeah.
No one would help. Oops, making noise here. No one would help them wrestle with the
Right.
concepts. Yeah, and that's a problem.
That is a problem. It is also a problem within ourselves because we need to um, take it upon ourselves to start searching and finding. And sometimes you have to not stay within one church or within one group if you're not getting answers somewhere. I don't think that should be an automatic, well, ditch the church. Maybe bounce around a little bit,
Yeah,
go from resource to resource.
yeah, and there are so many resources, especially here in America. We have we have access to things written from thousands of years ago,
For
to
free.
all the contemporary things that are being written that are exploring these questions. We just have to be willing to do it.
Mhm.
And I challenge the men who pastor to really open the library for people to do this and wrestle with them. It's never going to hurt.
No.
As long as you keep your attitude and your spirit right, it's
Hmm.
going to help people grow. And
Yeah.
there are some that are called to a life of theological inquiry and right stuff. And I thank God for men and women who do that, and I thank God for those men and women that dig into the original languages. Gosh, they devote their entire life to do that, and we ought to use what they're doing and understand what they're doing. It's a very important aspect that we can benefit from.
I agree. So there is one question that I have written down that has to do with infinitude and eternality. And it is, if God is a infinite being, how did he add the universe?
Yeah, well, God is not part of the universe. The material the universe is material, first of all, and so God didn't add that to himself, nor did he create that out of himself. It isn't like the pantheists believe that everything is God, that
Right.
the universe is even part of who the eternal God is. God
Mhm.
created something apart from himself. So he is both transcendent, meaning that he is beyond it, not just in space, but in concept, in existence, and everything else, and yet he is immanent within it. So we can be on this earth, and we could say, like Paul, in him, he quotes one of the Greek philosophers, in him we live and move and have our being. So we have both of those things happening at the same time. So God created something not out of himself, didn't use material from somewhere else. There was nothing in existence, but his word created it. God, Genesis tells us God just spoke what we call the universe into existence. And that is the only way we can actually comprehend that or get our minds around that. That's
Right.
something that we understand. He didn't add it to himself. Again, if he did that, he would be, we would be implying that he needs that to exist.
Right. And
But
that
he,
would make him dependent
right,
or not self-existing.
right, yeah.
But
But the
he is
universe needs God to exist.
right. The universe is dependent on
Right.
God.
Yeah, the scripture tells us that he upholds all things by the word of his power.
Hmm.
So the universe, our existence, depends on God for everything.
Yep.
Um, he has secondary causes, like food grows out of the ground, but he's the one who caused all of that initially to happen, um, whether it be plants or animals or whatever. He's still the original cause of those things.
Yep. And still the reason that they are existing
Exactly.
and that we are existing.
Yep.
Infinitude and eternality.
Yeah, just scratching the surface a little bit. You'll see them come into play when we start looking at the attributes of God that we can participate in. Meaning, like, I can't participate in God's infinitude. There's no way I can become infinite.
Right.
And infinitude isn't a thing that you can get part of it. Yeah, we have another person there, another being.
Yeah, it's the dog.
Yeah, I can't participate, but I can participate in the love of God. God can give me, I can, right way to say it is I can participate in him. I can participate in the love of God, in the goodness of God, in the mercy of God, the grace of God. and they can affect my life. And I can use them, I can speak them, show them all of these things that really reflect who he is. And
Right.
those are what we call the communicable or the moral attributes of God. They're things that God allows us to participate in. We've been talking about things that we can't participate in. Yeah.
See. Well, now you guys have met my dog, Moxie. Just close this door. Okay. Well, I think that that was great. A great scratching on infinitude and eternality. And like you mentioned, this is just a scratching the surface. A lot of people will be hearing these terms for the first time. So we're just kind of talking about it and defining it and seeing how it ties into a good theology. We're so happy that you guys tuned in, as always. If you do like our content, please like our videos and even subscribe to our channel. If there's anything you would like to talk to either one of us about, our emails will be on the next slide. Feel free to shoot us an email anytime. We look forward to being back with you guys next week. Thanks so much. Talk soon.